Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Tik Tok Shark. In May of last year, someone on TikTok called Alex Albrecht, who is a marine biodiversity student as well as a musician, shared a video on the app that had people seriously shocked. The TikTok shows a massive shark lurking around the ship that Alex was on, which is said to have just been off of the coast of Massachusetts at the time. The ship was full of research students when this massive shark made its appearance, many of which either screamed or had some sort of expletive to say in response. Another TikTok user asked in the comments if the shark in the video is a megalodon, considering how absolutely huge this thing was. Was this an actual megalodon? Likely not, but hey, I'm not the marine life student here, so who am I to say? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Cray Fisherman. David Stead is an Australian naturalist, and in his book titled Sharks and Rays of the Australian Seas, he details an encounter with a shark that some have taken to believe is the legendary Megalodon herself. Apparently this incident happened in 1981 to a group of Cray fishermen that David spoke with. These fishermen were absolutely terrified of a shark they saw in their fishing grounds, which were just off of Broughton Island. They were so scared, in fact, that they refused to return to the fishing spot for days. All the men agreed that the shark was monstrous and that it was most definitely a shark, not a whale. The men explained that they had never seen a shark of that size before, and considering how they were all seasoned fishermen who had all had their fair share of encounters with sharks, whales, and all of the terrifying things that the ocean has to offer, how frightened they were really did leave quite the impression. In our number 8 spot today, we have 2 specimens. This story comes from all the way back in 1869 when an Irish scientist headed out on an expedition to Seychelles. It is said that he went there to study fish, but man, he was not prepared for the specimens he would go on to study. It is said that he found one that was over 15 meters, which is already a whopping almost 50 feet, but the other one really took the cake. The second specimen it is said that he found was alleged to have been 23 meters long, which is a massive 75 feet. Since this was so long ago, there wasn't any official documentation of it, but if there had been, the second one would hold the record for being the largest ever recorded. That is absolutely wild. Seeing it is one thing, but imagine being able to actually study it. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Sailors. This gigantic shark sighting is said to have taken place in the 1960s just off of the edge of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. According to author B.C. Cartmel in his book Let's Go Fossil Shark Tooth Hunting, the sailors involved in this sighting initially refused to talk about it because of the fear of being teased for being afraid of what they had seen. After some time, however, they began to speak about the incident. They explained that while on board their 85-foot ship, they needed to weigh anchor in order to conduct some engine repairs. While this was ongoing, the crew became absolutely shocked when they saw the biggest shark they had ever seen slowly swimming past their completely stuck ship. Just like the last one, all the men agreed that they were not mistaking a whale and that it was indeed a shark. They also said that this shark was so large it was rivaling the boat in size. That is absolutely massive. Whether it really was a megalodon or not, whatever shark they saw that day certainly wasn't the average size. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Battle Scar. This story is a little different than the others on today's list, and it started with the sighting of a great white shark. This 15-foot long shark was spotted swimming just off of Isla Guadalupe in Mexico, but what was so striking about this great white in particular was the absolutely savage wound it had on its side. This huge bite mark had people speculating as to what in the world could have caused it. I mean, there aren't very many predators to great whites, so it's a pretty rare occasion to see such a huge bite mark right on the side of one, and people were doubting whether or not another shark would have done this to one of its own species. There definitely are reasons for why this could have been an attack from another shark, but of course people took this as a possible sign that maybe there's something bigger lurking in the waters. If the megalodon somehow isn't actually extinct and just manages to evade any sort of confirmation of its existence, it certainly would need a ton of food to survive, which makes big fish like great whites a perfect snack. The megalodon is, however, one of the most powerful predators to have ever lived on our planet, so if this bite really was from a megalodon, it's surprising that this great white made it out alive. In our number 5 spot today, we have a world record. Basking sharks are known for being one of the largest fish in the ocean, and that is exactly why the largest one ever recorded was definitely definitely something to write home about. In 1851, in the Bay of Fundy, which sits between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia here in Canada, a basking shark was caught in a herring net. This shark was measured to be at least 40 feet long, which is astoundingly large, and it certainly confused those who had caught it at first. I can imagine that they likely also thought that they had some kind of living fossil caught up in their net, but nope, instead they just set a new world record. In our number 4 spot today we have the demon. There are many stories and alleged sightings of what is now referred to as the quote Black Demon of Cortez, which is said to be a massive black shark seen off of Mexico's Baja coast. One story in particular regarding this elusive shark comes from a fisherman named Eric Mack. He had reported that one day while sailing he felt his boat begin to rock, which immediately gave him the feeling that something was awry. Eric was even further startled when he explained that he saw a massive towering tail sticking at least 5 feet out of the water. The stories of this shark are so infamous that it was even the focus of an episode of a History Channel show called Monster Quest. Maybe if there's a part 2 of this video we'll talk about some more of the sightings surrounding the demon. In our number 3 spot today we have Deep Blue. This shark is in fact not a megalodon, but it definitely is a more modern contender. Deep Blue is the name of a great white shark who is most definitely one of the greatest ever recorded, at least in our lifetime. This colossal monster is the largest great white shark ever caught on camera by scientists. She is measured to be 20 feet long, 8 feet high, and about 2.5 tons, and while this isn't all that huge compared to her massive prehistoric cousin, it certainly is no small feat. Rumors of her existence have been spread since as far back as the 1990s, but it wasn't until 2014 that she was officially caught on camera and documented. Researchers at the time were in the midst of studying tiger sharks, but she made her grand appearance after scavenging some food from a sperm whale carcass nearby. In our number 2 spot today we have Bigger Than the Boat. Zane Grey is a man who is a novelist, and he is definitely best known for his adventure novels, but it is also said that he was a deep sea angler, and it was during one of his fishing adventures that his Megalodon sighting came. In the novel, which is titled Megalodon, Fact or Fiction, writer Rick Emmer speaks of this incident, saying that Zane claimed to have seen, quote, one of the man-eating monsters of the South Pacific. It is said that whatever kind of shark he saw, it was a shark that was much longer than his boat, which was somewhere from 30 to 40 feet. He also said that this shark was yellow and green, and that it had a few white spots. Most notably, however, he said that the shark had a massive square head, and that it had, quote, immense pectoral fins. This is all to say that whether he saw a megalodon or not, whatever he saw was not just a harmless great white shark. What do you guys think? Perhaps a megalodon sighting, or just one of the tall, exciting tales told by Mr. Grey? In our number 1 spot today we have the Mariana Trench sighting. A few years ago a video began circulating the internet, and it shows a gigantic shark scouring the seafloor. People online quickly put a story to the video saying that allegedly this is a megalodon that was caught on camera at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The creature is seen swimming over top of what is apparently an abandoned shark cage, and the video seems to be enough to have convinced many people. The video certainly is compelling, and whatever we see is most definitely terrifying to look at, but with my very limited knowledge of anything that lives in the sea, it's tough to say anything further. While some people swear that this is solid proof, others have brought up sharks that may have a similar appearance to the one seen in the video. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have the Zuyo Maru monster. This story is one that comes to us from 1977, and rather than an alive animal sighting, this one is actually this carcass that was found that we still aren't quite sure what it belongs to. The Zuyo Maru carcass was one that was found by Japanese fishermen near New Zealand. Because it was so unique, it was taken to be analyzed, and while many have speculated that it was a basking shark, that has never been confirmed or proven. Considering the fact that it was definitely shark-like, but just not quite clear as to what exactly it was, is definitely interesting. In our number 9 spot today we have the sea creature. Back in both 1817 as well as 1819, there was a sea creature that visited the coast of Massachusetts, and it was seen by hundreds of people, but no one has been able to identify what it could have been for sure. The creature was said to be around 3 feet in diameter and around 50 feet long, and it is said that it moved similarly to how a whale or a dolphin might. The first sighting of this creature was when some fishermen spotted it, but the real panic began as the creature started to show itself closer to shore. To this day, some people swear that this was some sort of real sea monster, and others believe it was just a case of mass hysteria. What do you think? In our number 8 spot today, we have the Prehistoric Monster. Back in 1959, a fisherman named Tex Geddes and his friend James Gavin were boating somewhere just off of the coast of Scotland. It is said that during their time out to sea, they encountered a sea monster that neither of them had seen before. They described its head as being sort of turtle-shaped, and that it was a, quote, hellish monster of prehistoric times, and said that it was breathing heavily through a, quote, large red gash of a mouth. Okay, not exactly a kind description, but definitely a bit of a terrifying one. I think it's important to bring up that we don't actually know what megalodons looked like. We have a sort of idea, but at the end of the day, we only have fossils, jaws, and spines, and that doesn't leave us that much to work with. While it isn't quite clear what these two men saw for sure, and it's likely that we'll never know, whatever it was definitely wasn't just your average sea creature. In our number 7 spot today, we have Dr. Gru. When we think of the tales of sea monsters and myths, we often think of the many serpent-like creatures that just may be lurking underneath the water. This is definitely a common theme, and in the 17th century there was a botanist who came up with a sort of explanation for these sea serpent sightings. It's important to note that this botanist was a very legitimate scientist who really worked to change basically everything we knew about plant anatomy, so when he came forth with this evidence and explanation, it rightfully caught people's attention. Basically, he had this specimen, which was a sample of skin that he said was from some sort of seal, but that it had a neck just as long as the rest of its body. Of course, this would explain a whole bunch of sea monster sightings, but in the end, the skin sample ended up completely disappearing, making any confirmation of the story or the animal's existence completely impossible. I know a megalodon isn't necessarily supposed to look like a seal with a long neck, but who's to say for sure that it doesn't? In our number 6 spot today, we have the shipwreck. Back in 1909, the French steamer La Seine was out to sea when it collided with the British India steamer the Onda. A shipwreck is never good, but this one was particularly bad as, in heavy fog, the French ship sank in just 2 minutes. This of course left people stranded in the water, and I mean, you can probably see where this is going. In the aftermath of this wreck, while waiting for the rescue, there were 101 people who lost their lives from shark attacks. That's a lot of people. That is either a lot of sharks or a very few large ones. I mean, none of us were there, so it's hard to say for sure, but whatever really happened here, it's an absolutely horrifying tragedy. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Kayak Encounter. Ida Parker and Kristen Orr were kayaking off of the coast of Plymouth in 2014 when they encountered a shark. This is truly a nightmare scenario, and it must have been absolutely terrifying. The pair, however, had actually set off with the intention of seeing a great white shark, and while it's likely that this is exactly what they encountered, they definitely did not expect what happened next. The two had heard of rumblings of a shark in the area that had swallowed a seal in one gulp, and this is what sparked their desire to head out on this journey. While out there, however, the shark began to attack their kayaks. In the end, both of them made it out alive, and when their kayaks were recovered, one was found with a huge bite mark in it. In our number 4 spot today, we have the oldest shark attack. Considering the fact that the megalodon is said to have been extinct somewhere over 2 million years ago, even evidence that seems ancient to us is a lot more recent than what our current understanding of their timeline here on Earth would suggest. That is exactly why the discovery of what is speculated to be the world's oldest evidence of a shark attack is very interesting. This discovery came by way of a 3,000-year-old human skeleton that is marked with different gashes and puncture wounds. It is said that because of the volume of wounds, it makes it slightly easier to tell the story of what happened. This is because while researchers first believed that perhaps the wounds were caused by metal weapons, this could not explain why there were so many in certain parts of the body. Another telltale sign is how this skeleton was discovered in Japan, which at the time of this person's life, there weren't really any metal weapons at that point in history in Japan, which ruled out this theory entirely. They were also able to rule out other terrestrial carnivores, and that's when they turned to marine life to look for some more answers. Because of the time it's been, we obviously don't know what creature was involved in this attack for sure, but with the mass amount of wounds found on the skeleton, it was likely to be something large and terrifying. In our number 3 spot today, we have snorkeling. Robert Pamperin and a friend friend, Gerald Lair, were snorkeling off of La Jolla Cave in California in 1959 when Robert was attacked by a shark. It is said to have all happened quite quickly, and Gerald was alerted to the distress when he heard Robert scream. Gerald turned and saw Robert unusually high in the water and his mask was missing. At this point, Gerald dove under, and this is when he realized exactly what was going on. There was a shark that had Robert in its mouth up to his waist. Unfortunately, there was not much Gerald could do to stand up to this absolutely massive shark that he described as larger than your average great white. Robert sadly did not survive the event, and by the time rescuers arrived, they were only able to locate one of his fins. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Jersey Shore. Back in 1916, during the summer season, there were 5 different shark attacks that occurred over the span of 10 days that ended up in the deaths of 4 people. This wasn't something that had been seen before in the area, which of course left people speculating as to why. There was a heat wave in the area during the time, which likely led to more people being out enjoying summertime sort of activities, and maybe this attracted the shark, but in the end, no one knows for sure because no one even knows what kind of shark is responsible for the attacks in the first place. Luckily, this didn't go on to become a continuous trend, and whatever shark this was went on its merry way, or perhaps found another food source, or whatever, but this series of attacks definitely kept the public on edge for the weeks and months surrounding. In our number 1 spot today, we have the USS Indianapolis. This is a story that has been considered the worst shark attack in history, which is definitely a horrific thing to think about. In 1945, the USS Indianapolis was an unescorted US warship that was sailing in the Pacific when it was struck by a Japanese torpedo. This had no problem tearing the ship in two, which meant that 900 sailors were now floating in the ocean waiting for rescue. Over the next 5 days, nearly 600 men lost their lives due to shark attacks. I said this about the other one that was similar to this, and I'll say it again. That's either a group of sharks or a very few large, very hungry ones. From the survivors' accounts of what happened over the course of those days, it seemed like an absolutely nightmare situation. This is exactly why this has gone on to be called one of the worst shark attacks in history. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the photographer. This is an encounter that occurred just last year in November. Underwater photographer Darren Verbeck was diving off of the coast of Hawaii's Big Island when he saw what he thought was a school of fish. He began to get closer, I mean the whole photographer thing, and as he got closer he started to think that what he was actually seeing was a tiger shark. He continued to get closer, and that's when he said, quote, "I just kept looking at the head. I'm like, that is not a tiger shark." And it got closer and closer, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Darren continued to get closer to the shark and estimated it to be over 15 feet, which is definitely quite large. He explained that the shark was not acting in a threatening way, so he continued to take his photos and shot as much as he could before the massive shark decided to swim away. Experts explained that the shark was likely in the area because of humpback whales, and honestly, I do not want to see the shark that could take down one of those beasts. In our number 9 spot today, we have Todd Endris. Todd Endris is actually a man who was attacked by the same shark 3 different times on August 28, 2007. Todd was near Marina State Park in California when the attacks occurred. The first one didn't do too much damage, but the second one was certainly much worse. He would later go on to say, spoiler alert, he survived these attacks, he would later go on to say that during this second attack, the shark skinned his back, quote, like a banana peel. Okay, Mario Kart just turned into Nightmare on Elm Street. With the third attack, the shark attempted to eat his leg, which was still attached to his body, and this is when his kind of unlikely savior came in. It was actually a group of dolphins that decided to surround Todd, which provided enough of a distraction that he was able to ride a wave back to shore. It is definitely possible that the shark could have, and it may have, eaten one of those rescue dolphins should it choose to. Once Todd was back on shore, despite having lost half of his blood, his friends were able to help him until rescue arrived, and from there, just 6 weeks later, he was back in the water. Sadly, Todd ended up losing his life in September of 2016 from a car crash, but it's important to note that after his attack, before his untimely death, he made it clear he held no grudge against his shark attacker. He said, quote, "We're in his realm, not the other way around." In our number 8 spot today, we have the J-Bay event finals. This shark attack is from 2015 and is one that happened on live TV, but thankfully it turned out much better than it could have. During the finals of the J-Bay event, which again was being broadcast live around the world, a shark got himself a little in over his head when he decided to try and take a bite out of 3-time two-time world surfing champion Mick Fanning. Mick reacted a lot more bravely than I would have and started to fight back against the shark. While this was going on, another pro surfer, Julian Wilson, paddled towards the shark in order to try and help. In the end, the safety teams came out as quickly as possible to rescue the surfers and a photographer who was also out on the water, and everyone was fine, albeit probably a little shaken up. Fights broke out on the internet over whether this was a shark attack or a shark encounter, and I mean, all that really matters is the humans and the shark are all safe at the end of the day. In our number 7 spot today, we have the strange environment. This is a shark encounter that, I'll be honest, it isn't a megalodon, but it is one that is so strange it might just show that maybe we don't really have all the answers to ocean mysteries. Scientists were really surprised and confused when they found hammerhead and silky sharks swimming near an underwater volcano in the South Pacific. This is because the waters around there would be extremely hot and they would also be really acidic. This is an extreme environment for marine life, and while some species would thrive in this environment, sharks aren't really on that list, hence the confusion and bafflement of the scientists. While this isn't a confirmed Megalodon sighting, it is just something that shows us that life under the sea is mysterious and new secrets are revealed to us every day. In our number 6 spot today, we have Watson and the shark. For this one, we are headed all the way back to 1749 with a cabin boy named Brooke Watson. Brooke was swimming in the Havana harbor when he had his encounter with a shark. This one grabbed him by his right foot and dragged him under. The shark got a second chomp on his foot before a rescue boat was able to come and save him. The sailor on the boat managed to get the shark to back off enough that they could get Brooke out of the water. Brooke lost his lower leg, but his life was saved, which is absolutely the most important part. Brooke's story is not over, however, as he went on to become a member of parliament and eventually Lord Mayor of England. He was so proud of himself for not only having survived a shark attack, but then going on to earn this title that he commissioned famous artist John Singleton Copley to create a painting called Watson and the Shark, which detailed his horrifying encounter and probably went on to scare a ton of people at the time. In our number 5 spot today, we have Instagram famous. John Braxton is a man who Instagram is definitely not very happy at, and if his video came up in your feed unsuspectingly, you might also have some words for the guy. John was 27 years old at the time of his shark encounter, and he was spearfishing at the time. During his time fishing, he had an encounter with a huge shark that ended up taking a massive bite right out of his leg. John was thankfully able to escape the shark and swim to shore, where his partner tied a tourniquet and called 911. When the ambulance arrived, John was likely in shock. I mean, I would be if I even saw a shark beside me, let alone if one bit me. So in this altered state, John took his phone out and started recording a video where he panned down to his terribly injured leg. He of course posted the video to Instagram, who later removed it, but of course not before the entire computer and phone having population got a chance to save it and reshare it at any chance possible. In our number 4 spot today, we have Breach. This is a shark encounter that truthfully I have very little background info on, but the video really speaks for itself. This shark video was recorded in Mossel Bay and it shows this gigantic shark basically leaping out of the ocean. I mean, come on, imagine. That would be absolutely terrifying. People who are more well versed in shark behavior than I am have explained that this shark, despite how it looks, is actually not doing this to be threatening, and it's not a move that would be done should it be attempting to attack something. I mean, that's not entirely true. It's actually more so used in order to try and catch fast moving prey like seals. It's relatively rare to capture a shark doing this though, because it takes so much energy for it to propel itself like this. I mean, they can reach 40 miles per hour and fly 10 feet into the air out of the water. That takes some serious strength. In our number 3 spot today, we have Achmat Hassiem. Back in 2006, Achmat and his brother were assisting lifeguards in Cape Town, South Africa, and to do this, they were helping out running different survival drills. During this one particular drill, the brother was lying in the water, pretending to be someone who needed help, and that is when a huge shark could be seen heading towards this brother that was completely unaware. Achmat saw this and was so quick thinking he knew that sharks are typically attracted to sound, which I actually didn't know, so there's a little shark trivia fact for ya. So because he knew this, he started splashing around in the water. This worked, and it led to the shark leaving his brother alone, but instead, the shark now set his sights on Achmat. It ended up grabbing him by his right leg and pulling him underwater. He was able to use his left leg to kick at the shark until it let go of him, but the shark was still able to get away with his leg below the knee. A boat was able to rush him to shore, and help arrived quickly enough to rush him to the hospital and save his life. Achmat has not not let this slow him down in the slightest though. He has gone on to reach not only the 2008 Beijing Paralympic Games, but he won gold at the 2012 London Paralympic Games, which is absolutely incredible. He has also gone on to become a shark advocate, saying that he has, quote, a sense that sharks are in trouble, and who better to speak up for sharks than a shark attack survivor. In our number 2 spot today, we have Rodney Fox. Rodney Fox is a man who was thought of as one of the best spear fishermen in the world. In 1963, he was partaking in the Australian Spearfishing Championships, which were being held just south of Adelaide, when he went through what is widely regarded as one of the worst shark attacks in history. The shark he encountered bit him around the waist, which ended up puncturing his diaphragm, ripping his lungs, and crushing his rib cage. Not only this, but the attack left his organs exposed, so much so that when he finally made it back to shore, those rescuing him had to keep his wetsuit on to ensure that his insides actually stayed on the inside. Despite the fact that Rodney needed at least 4 hours of surgery and about 400 stitches, like many people who have these sorts of terrifying encounters, rather than shying away from sharks and the water, he leaned in. He actually became an advocate for sharks after this. He created the first underwater shark observatory and helped to dispel the rumors that sharks are bad, crazy, scary animals that we should all fear. In our number 1 spot today, we have Michael Coots. Back in 1997, Michael was surfing near the coast of Hawaii when he had his shark encounter. The shark decided to attack and grabbed Michael by both of his legs. Michael has gone on to explain that once the shark had a hold on him, it began swinging him back and forth like a dog would do with a toy. That is absolutely so vivid and so horrifying to even think about. Michael was able to punch the shark into letting go of him and was able to escape to safety after the scary ordeal. Although he was lucky and happy to be alive, the shark had done enough damage that Michael ended up losing his right leg. Despite this setback, Michael was back in the water just 3 weeks later, already using his prosthetic leg and getting used to surfing with it so he could get right back to what he loves. Michael could be terrified of sharks now and no one would blame him, but it's the exact opposite. He swam around them and even taken selfies with them since, and has explained how much he respects them, saying, quote, sharks are not to be feared but are incredibly beautiful and extremely important species for the health of our oceans.